Hi, I'm Rami Bear here with Jeremy Carroll for the Familyguide podcast, and we are talking today about what it means to make a film that is focused on the true and the good and the beautiful, and if it is wrong to do movies on suffering or not. So stay tuned. I guess we could talk about the good, true, and beautiful.
My wife.
Wow. Oh. Zing, zing.
Brownie points.
So, I read some interesting news lately about a launch of another film festival, Christian film festival. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of them. But this one was kind of talking about how it was going to deal with the tough stuff. You know what I mean? And I was just thinking that, I think it's so interesting about Christian films because we see a lot of films, that we see from the major studio films there's stuff with a lot of faith in those to the Christian independent films. Mm-hmm. And I think that the interesting trend I see in the Christian independent films is they love to deal with suffering. It's interesting because every group after the other tries to out suffering the other, and if you think about all the faith films that I've seen in the last couple of years, it's just all of them are about somebody dying, usually of cancer or something. Yep. It's just a lot, Now it doesn't mean that they always deal sometimes they deal with it in a not totally great way of dealing with suffering. It doesn't feel, it feels like the filmmaker hasn't dealt with suffering themselves, but it does feel like a lot of it is just about suffering. I just think that it's interesting because when you're talking about the effectiveness of dealing with a tough topic, I do wish that Christians would put more humor in it. I just wish that please, Christians, you can joke. It's I was watching a movie the other day with my wife, and it was a very good movie, well done, famous actors, and the guy's wife dies or whatever in the middle of it. And you'll probably know what movie I'm talking about now that I say it. But it's just oh my gosh, it's every movie I see is about some horrible thing happening, and yes, they hold their faith in the midst of it. But it's we also are a faith of joy. Yeah. And it's we've missed out on it's okay to laugh, and it's okay to have just stupid action films, and it's okay to have rom-coms, and it's okay to have other elements. You don't have to have everything about drugs or trafficking or cancer or all of those things. It's and we get people who come in and pitch us pretty regularly to different projects, and it's I can't tell you how many have pitched us about the cancer thing. It's my mom was on chemo for 26 years. We went to a lot of doctor's offices. She died of cancer. I don't want to see a movie about that.
Last thing she wanted to do was sit and watch.
Last thing she wanted to do was see that. And last thing we want to do is see it. Yeah. You know what I mean? As a family member that dealt with it, I think that's why I loved Family Camp so much. Mm-hmm. It was just funny. It was just lightweight. It was just I wish... I just thought it was interesting because they're there's a lot kind of pushing about this new film festival, which is all the other film festivals of they want to deal with the tough topics. It's every Christian movie wants to deal with the tough topics. What about just the stupid topics? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or there's a movie, Mom's Night Out. Yeah, I thought that was really fun. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It was just lightweight. It was just fun. It was just
the Gavin Stone movie.
Yeah. It was just it's so interesting about they just want to deal with these really tough topics. And some people deal with the tough topics horribly because you can tell they've never dealt with toughness themselves. And some people deal with tough topics well, but it's still it's such a downer. Mm-hmm. And you're just oh my gosh, does it really move the needle forward?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And I wonder if I was thinking on a bigger thing of us as Christians, movies are already not real life, right? They cut out elements because it's not life. They elaborate on it. You cut out the person going to the bathroom, or you cut out
I hope
the people eating or whatever. Yeah. You cut out a lot of the elements of the thing. It's not a day in the life. You know what I mean? Many filmmakers have tried that, and it's really boring. Yep. You know what I mean? Well. But it's a glimpse. It's a moment. Do you know what I mean? It's trying to pull through, a narrative is trying to pull through one element of life to pull a story, And so this is what I was thinking about on a bigger picture is is it wrong? Okay, so first we talked about the fact that like Christian independent filmmakers seem to focus so much on suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, some do it well, some do it poorly, but they love to deal with suffering. It's just like they want more suffering. You know what I mean? Which most people don't want it. If you look at like the majority of Americans, they say that they want to watch a movie with comedy. If you look at all the Marvel movies, they're basically comedies. You know what I mean? Like they are very funny, like lightweight, like Thor, any of those things, they're comedies. You know what I mean? Like the majority of Americans say that they would like to look at comedies, you know? But I wonder on a bigger scale, and I wanted to talk to you about this, if it's even wrong to do the dark stuff. Okay? So like the Bible says, look on what's true and what's good and what's beautiful. Mm-hmm. So the question is it actually like, is it wrong? Like, is it wrong to make, let's say, because there's a lot of movies that have come out about certain topics and stuff. So I'm going to focus on a topic that there hasn't been something. Let's say about like drug use and the drug trade.
Yeah.
Like, is it wrong to make a movie that focuses on drugs? Mm-hmm. Like on like the drug dealers, on the drug problems, on the drug, like I wonder if that I think there's two questions. One is it effective? Which I don't think it's effective, to be honest, personally. And we can talk about that.
Yeah.
But two is it wrong? And I wonder what you think about that. Like, is it right or is it wrong from like a moral standpoint to do like the really...
It's a great discussion and good question. Because I feel like both can be effective. One's probably more effective than another, judging by how Marvel and all these other groups are doing with like a more positive flair to it. But then you have filmmakers kind of like Mel Gibson, who's not afraid to show quite a bit of evil and then show good overcoming that evil. I think you got to strike the balance between not glamorizing evil in a way, you know, like a Tarantino movie or something. It's going to be like, look at all the spectacle of how all the evil is so fun and crazy. But like, you got to make it like a real enemy or a real conflict in the movie. Make it like a visceral enough that when the good overcomes it, it's going to be that triumphant ending, I think.
You know, that's a good point. I mean, I think Mel Gibson is a great point. Because if you look at something like Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah.
The only thing is that I do feel like, in a way, like those movies are comic book style movies.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, it really, like, when I watched Hacksaw Ridge, I mean, that's one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, you do feel like you want to be a better Christian through it.
Yeah.
But it does deal with, like, you definitely see, like, people are hurt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just feels a little more comic booky, right? Because, like, one of the things that my father always brings up or talks through and stuff, too, is the fact that, like, both Precious and Inside Out are dealing with the exact same topic, you know? But, like, Inside Out is, in a lot of ways, a lot more effective about the topic. And they actually, a lot of psychologists even use it, you know, as a way to, like, talk through, like, feelings and emotions and stuff like that. And, like, Precious had a very limited... Because that's a great point that you said. Because there is almost a glorification to some of these things that focus so much on suffering. There's, like... there becomes a glorification in it, you know? Because, like, look at things like 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where they say, quote unquote, like it's trying to talk against suicide, but the level of suicides went up after that showed, because it, like, there was almost like a glorification to, like, oh, she's sticking it to people, you know? Or, like...
Well, they even showed, like, how to do it. Like, I think you got to be careful about how you're portraying it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have imitators everywhere for this kind of thing. Yeah.
Or even like things like, I don't know, like John Wick or something, or Terminalist, where it's like these revenge killings. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, gets to this point of, like, it's glorifying,
That's a really good point. I think
the revenge killing in the mix of it.
The motivator for the evil can't be the hero trying to attain something, I feel like. Or doing the right thing by doing the wrong thing to the wrong people.
Right.
That doesn't work.
Right.
It's two negatives, you know?
They call it, I mean, it's kind of a crass term, but they call it revenge porn, basically.
Right.
Is like this idea that, like, you get this great joy over someone inflicting an incredible amount of, like, revenge on someone.
Like Mel Gibson showing violence in a war scenario. like he's not like the main character is not inflicting the harm.
Right.
He's trying to avoid it and help people through it.
And I think the thing that he always does effectively is like he shows like the noble and the mixed of like the savagery. You know what I mean? And like he doesn't, I feel like in a way he does. I know this would, if he heard this, he'd maybe be offended, but like I feel like great filmmakers, like they do kind of, they comic bookize it. I mean, like
totally.
Cause like it's like reading the Iliad, you know, or the Odyssey, you know what I mean? Like it does talk a little bit about stuff, but it mostly like emphasizes like, oh, how heroic the character is through the things that they're doing. You know what I mean? It's almost like, I don't know. I feel like that's a good distinction, that the filmmakers that do it wrong, they focus on the darkness and they don't focus on the hero. You know what I mean? Like they lose sight of the hero for the darkness.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because they want to show, you know, quote unquote, the reality so much that they miss on actually like showing
the reality of the good overcoming.
Yeah. And the thing is that like, I just feel like human beings, like we don't actually want to see reality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we want to see something outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
We want to see something like you watch sci-fi because you want to see something magical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you watch fantasy, same thing. Like you watch like a rom-com because you want to see something that's perfect. You know, like you watch these things because you want to be able to see, you want to see like comedy because it's an exaggeration of real life. It's not actually real life. It's a complete exaggeration.
Yeah.
You know, like nobody could do half the things they do in comedies and actually like not be arrested and like thrown in prison or like have something horrible happen to them, you know, where they stop like a plane or whatever, you know? I just think that like there is such an emphasis, you know, on people wanting to like focus on the darkness, but they've missed it. It doesn't alleviate the pain. Like what alleviates the pain is the belief that there's hope.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the power of the gospel is like Jesus didn't focus on the struggle. I actually was reading this book from Louis Giglio, and I forgot the name now. I think it's called like, Don't Let the Enemy Take a Seat at Your Table or something. But like, one of the powerful things about Christianity is the fact that like, and what I really thought was fascinating in this book is one of the big things that he emphasizes is we forget that we are no longer sinners. Okay, this is a big thing, and you can actually disagree with me on this, but I thought the book was interesting, and I might even be interpreting it wrong. But what he said is that we forget that like when we accept Jesus, everything is forgiven on the cross. Like everything that we did and will do is forgiven on the cross. So we're not like walking around like, you know, like smacking ourselves or something like that, like because of the fact that like, oh, we're so horrible. It's actually like, wow, we are now like in Christ's image. You know what I mean? Like we're his image bearer.
Yeah.
So like that gives us hope. And what he said is that he's seen like transformation in people who change their mindset of like, oh, I'm a sinner. Like I'm going to make these mistakes anywhere. It's like, oh, I'm an addict. I'm bound to be able to do these addictive things, as opposed to like, no, I'm a saint. Wow. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I am a redeemed sinner. You know what I mean? Like I'm a forgiven person. You know what I mean? And knowing that, live up to that like means that like, oh, I have to live up to the fact that I'm like now in Christ's image. Wow, you know what I mean? Not like the image of the sinner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that I felt like that was like a really good point, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing.
In the mix of it.
I thought it was interesting. Your dad always was talking about how the early church never used the cross as like symbolism for the church. It was always the resurrected Jesus on all the stained glass and everything. It wasn't until later on that they decided to start using the cross.
I wonder why they did that.
I'm not sure.
Just because of the emphasis on the fact that he had victory over death.
Yeah. Like it was the resurrected Jesus that they were celebrating.
You know, that's a good point because a lot of people died on the cross. The Romans killed a lot of people.
There's another pastor, they were like, it's almost like you would be wearing an electric chair around your like neck.
Wow.
You know, like it's a torture and death device. But,
Right.
I mean, it's powerful in its own right, obviously, because he overcame it. Kind of showing what he overcame, but it's also like, it's pretty,
That's actually a beautiful point, because the truth is that like the strength of our faith is not that he's on the cross. It's that he rose again, because a lot of people died on the cross.
Also along those lines, like here at Movie Guide, we've had to like convince the filmmakers to keep putting in these resurrection sequences at the end of like a Jesus movie instead of just ending at the cross.
Yeah. I think that is so interesting. Again, like full circle. It's just the fact that like for some reason, like a lot of these Christian independents, they want to wallow in the darkness or the suffering. They want to wallow in the suffering.
Yeah.
And they've missed out on the joy. And I just wish, I beg, if anyone's listening to this, please make a comedy, make a rom-com, make an action movie, make something that's fun and lightweight that everybody can watch. Like, don't make it all about suffering.
Yeah.
People already suffer. You know what I mean? And one more point that I think, and I might have even brought this up a while ago on our podcast, but like I saw this interesting documentary about comic books or whatever, and like the first comic books. And it was talking about like Superman and like how in part like he was created because there was a lot of corruption because of like prohibition, and like one of their thoughts like of the creator of like Superman was the fact that he wanted to show people that like you could be incorruptible. You know what I mean? Like you could do the right thing and to inspire people, and you and I have talked about this, but like, they had a thing in Victorian England where they'd have like these like walls all around the city or whatever, like these post boards all around the city where people would post up heroic acts that had been done. Like people like saving people or people like protecting people and they said that you could go around London and like for a little while and you wouldn't be afraid of like being mugged or whatever because there was this assumption that people would step in, you know what I mean? And kind of like protect you, because like the society itself had, made it that heroism was emphasized.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, I think maybe one of the things that God is getting at with the like thinking on what's good and true and beautiful is the thing is like the things that society praises are the things that people will seek to do, and it's like, look at when they've noticed that like every time they put in like a suicide of a celebrity in the newspapers, the number of suicides go up. You know what I mean? Like every time they put up a divorce of a celebrity, the number of divorces go up. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, these are people that they praise and they mention them in public, and it's like, there's almost a thing, and a thing that we emphasize so much in Movie Guide is like, hey, we want to be able to show people what is good. You know what I mean? So you can go on our site and find the actor who's been married for 40 years or whatever, you know, and like that as an inspiration of like, it can be done.
And even in our own work, we've seen those are the stories that blow up and get shares and comments and everything. It's all the positive stories. Yeah.
And I think that like you can definitely have like false positives.
Right.
For sure. Like you can have something that's like so positive that you miss the point, kind of the mind over matter. Like if I thought every day I could get a six pack, I would get a six pack, but those don't work. You know what I mean? But like, I do think that like, that's why I love Mel Gibson stuff. I think it's a great emphasis on the heroic. You know what I mean? And I think that the Marvel movies used to be like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they are now because I haven't seen any of the new ones since having 4 children. So I don't know. I don't know when the last one I saw before. Well, I don't know. There's been a lot of them, right?
I think you're totally right about that. Like now thinking about it with the Mel Gibson movies, they're totally comic books. Like The Patriot.
Yeah.
He's like grabs the American flag and he's running at the other guy at the very end. It's just like, that stuff is so cool. Yeah, it's cool. It's inspiring. It like makes you want to be a better version of yourself. Yeah. It's uplifting and inspirational. I think that like, I wish we would focus more on that. And I wish that even at the Christian church, like we would tell more stories of that. Yeah. Yeah. Like. Or even not Mel Gibson, but even like the new Star Wars movies that came out, they made Luke Skywalker like a burnout on an island somewhere. And everyone was like, what happened to our hero?
Wow. It's like, they love the dark hero. They love, I mean, what is it called? Anti-hero.
Anti-hero, yeah.
They love the anti-hero. And it's like, we don't need that as a society. Yeah. Like, you literally just look around anywhere and you can see darkness. Right. Just step outside your door. Like, we want to see.
That's why we like entertainment.
That's why we want to see something that inspires us to be better versions of ourselves. Right.
It's an
I mean,
inspiring escape
that's why I
for
love.
media.
I mean, that's why in paintings I love Turner. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, um, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, um, yeah. But what you were gonna say something about lasso or something, or
Well, and then I feel like I don't know what it is. It feels like a draw to go to the dark when you're an artist
yeah,
or a filmmaker, because even like the show, like our show starts doing really well, like Ted Lasso or something, then they have to like muddy it up and make it
I
dark.
know.
We were even listening to a kid's podcast, and it's a great podcast, but one of the main characters now has a dark past and they're doing flashbacks, and we're like,
Oh my
guys,
gosh.
just keep everybody like happy. This
They
is for
love doing
kids.
this. I mean, but like, I
It's
think that
weird.
they don't look. I think that it is a difficulty to maintain the tension. And I think that
Yeah,
there's a weakness to kind of like give into.
making
It's like
darkness the tension itself.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean like
Mm.
I mean that I think it's more lazy filmmaking to go towards the darkness.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like the tension of doing something that's like beautiful and uplifting and heroic but meaningful, like is very hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the tension of like it's really hard, probably not for other people, but for myself to work out every day. Okay?
Me
I
too.
do not want to do it. You know what I mean? But it's like something that like I know that doing it is meaningful and helpful.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like even if we think about the fact that like our faith is a faith of mysterious tension. We believe that God is fully God and fully man. You know, like we believe that there are three and one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we believe in a tension that is okay to walk through.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that like the same thing with like great filmmaking or great art or anything like that is like you have to have that beautiful tension that like up like Hacksaw Ridge or whatever. Like you have to have that thing that like pulls you through.
Right.
And the problem is like it's almost like the person is in the first season of Ted Lasso, for example, is a good example. Like they're willing to maintain their discipline.
Mm-hmm.
They're willing to go to the gym every day. And then they're just like, you know what, we got on top, like who cares? Like let's just eat a buffet every day.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like that's what season 2 is like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, he's got like some darkness and he's struggling. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, like the thing that made it beautiful was it was a man who believed deeply in hope, and his optimism broke the world around him of cynicism. Like he was in a culture of the UK, which was deeply cynical, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like he brought optimism, and that optimism changed everybody around him.
Yeah.
That was powerful. His whole phrase was believe. The problem with like the second season was it flipped it on its head or whatever to
Yeah.
be darker, but it's like you lost the point of it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you walked away from the discipline of like staying to the point of
Yeah.
what the message mattered, you know? And it's like, that's really hard. That's why I do think that like Mel Gibson particularly has been really good. But like, I mean, you can even see this in like a lot of filmmakers. It's very hard for filmmakers to maintain that discipline.
Yeah.
And I think the filmmakers who do maintain that discipline regularly, like, are the ones that are praised. I mean, even if you look at
Yeah.
like, I think that Marvel did an incredible job. I think that now you've seen that they've losing that discipline, you know. And I
Yeah,
think the
totally.
Eternals maybe was the first one that kind of fell away from that, you know,
Yeah.
where they're getting all
Yeah.
wonky or whatever. But like, I mean, same thing in the DC universe. You know what I mean? Like the
Totally,
Batman series was
totally.
amazing under Christian Bale, you know, and
Immediately
Christopher
went
Nolan
dark.
or whatever. And then like it was a great like
Yeah.
sort of line of like darkness and positivity in the sense.
Yeah.
And then like it's gotten so, I mean, the second one was kind of dark, but Dark Knight was pretty
Second
dark.
act usually is.
But like it just like they progressively have gone darker and darker and darker and darker and darker, and nobody
Yeah.
watches them anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I got to see a little bit of that Patterson one on the plane, and it was like so dark. I was just like, oh my gosh,
Oh,
I do
yeah,
not
yeah,
want to
yeah.
watch this.
The
It doesn't.
Batman.
It makes no sense. Everything about it is dark. They don't get it.
But the
like
thing
all
is,
the
like-
DC universe has failed recently because it's
Yeah.
so dark.
Yeah.
They don't get it. People don't want to watch that.
The thing
You
is,
know?
like, it's not like you can. It's not about avoiding dark, difficult things in life. Like everyone knows these things happen. But along those lines, you got like a classic movie like It's a Wonderful Life, where the guy's dealing with like suicide and depression. But you don't think of it as a suicidal depression story. You think of it as this wonderful redemption story.
You know, that's an amazing point. actually, you know what? That's an incredible point because I don't think you ever think of It's a Wonderful Life as a suicide story.
Right. Yeah.
But really it is. Like he's dealing with suicide and depression. And it's actually like a very hopefully joyous movie. I mean, that's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I also think that's one of the best romances of all time.
It's a great
because like you feel like the tension of their romance, and they don't have to show anything gratuitous or anything
on both
like
sides.
You feel like they love each other so much, because like a lot of the problem with gratuitousness is like, again, I think it's lazy filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I'm a dude who likes war films. I'm going to go back to that. But like a bad war film is one where it's just like, oh my gosh, arms are flying everywhere. Like blood is just everywhere. It's like, no, that doesn't affect you.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you watch something like, let's say Gettysburg, which I think is an incredible movie, like you're moved because you cared about the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And as they're standing there dying, like you cared about the loss of that character.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's the same thing like with romance. It's like they mess it up when they're just like doing all this weird random gratuitous stuff all around, or they're all running around naked, which you don't want to see. Like really, like the thing is that it's the tension of the fact that these two people love each other.
Yeah.
And they can't connect. That's what makes you feel for them and want them to be able to connect.
It's like Pride and Prejudice. It's like the tension's there.
Yeah.
You're not seeing anything.
Yeah. I think It's a Wonderful Life is one of the greatest movies of all time. But I think I don't know if we resolved the original question of if it's wrong.
Yeah.
But I do wish that like especially Christian independent filmmakers would just like stop focusing so much on suffering.
Balance
it doesn't
it
mean
out.
that we don't sometimes need that, but like all of it is. It's like you go through all the top movies, of the Christian side. It's like it's like this person dies, this person's going through some horrible thing. This person dies, goes to heaven and comes back. Like they're all so
the
much.
whole movie is all about the hospitals.
Suffering, which is
right.
It's just like, I wish, please, if you're watching this, if you make any content or want to on anything, or you want to tell stories, please, like focus on the hope, on the joy. That's literally what we have in the gospel. That's literally the point of the gospel is the good news.
I think you introduce the problem.
Yeah.
Don't overly emphasize it or obsess
don't wallow
on it.
In it. Yeah.
And show how redemption, grace, and love overcome it.
Yeah.
That's your movie.
Or just like, I mean, like, and I think the movies are important that deal with tough things, but like, I just feel like we would benefit from seeing more comedies, please.
That's true.
Comedies or rom-coms or something.
Make it easier on Movieguide.
Christians, please. Make a Christian. Christians can laugh too, I promise. Okay.
Thanks for watching the Familyguide podcast presented by Movieguide. If you like this content, go ahead and hit subscribe and check back with us next time. And check out movieguide.org for more about all the things we talked about today.
If you enjoy videos that follow your values like ours and you want to help us continue, go to movieguide.org/donate, because we're actually a nonprofit. You may not know that, but we're working in Hollywood every day to help families have more choices that follows their values. And also subscribe right now.